Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second Fantasy Premier League show. I am joined by the Polish Prince himself in Chicago, which, if you guys can't tell, he is also not, well, he might be in a loft. He might be in a basement. He might be in a bunker. He might be hanging out with Liverpool's new midfield. Either way, he has a pretty badass green screen behind him and a nice background.
I have come out of hiding with the news that just broke little over half an hour ago. I've come out of my hole, come out of my shell, come out of my bunker, wherever it was. I'm out, I'm here, and I'm excited.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't heard or weren't paying attention to our last podcast, we were just running our Thursday Premier League show that we do every week, our Thursday Liverpool podcast, 8 p.m. Eastern, normally hosted by Maka and his trio of boys. I was the guest host tonight. Liverpool has reportedly agreed to terms with Moises Caicedo and agreed to a British record fee for the destroyer they need, the player they need. Honestly, might be the player they need more than any other player with how weak our defense has looked the last couple of years. So we're not going to talk about Liverpool all night, though I do feel like this might have changed some of my fantasy outlook as things go forward. But man, what a time to be a supporter. Eric weighs in, and I think this might be Eric's first comment I've seen on our Welcome Caicedo, tuned from Kenya. And we are so happy to have a viewer from Kenya. I'm not sure I can get my wife to view sometimes from the other room. And Eric chimed in from Kenya. So, Eric, seriously, we really appreciate you. Please give it a like, a subscribe, send more folks that you know and people that are interested in Liverpool or Fantasy EPL, because we will be talking about the fantasy. Matter of fact, if you haven't already, why don't you just log into the app, make 4 or 5 more transfers after you hear what we talk about tonight. But more importantly, go ahead and join the American Scouser Cup. We will be reviewing the standings. We'll try to find maybe a nice prize of free swag that nobody wants at the end of the season for the winner. I would love for it to be someone associated to our podcast and or our contributors for our site. I doubt that highly because I've seen the way that we all play Fantasy EPL. But we're really going to be an exciting season. So go ahead, jump in there. If you need a link, you can send us a message. We can drop that link out there. So, man, we have to talk about fantasy soccer. I just thought we would just talk about what the fantasy is that's going on in Western Massachusetts, which is I've basically gotten Liverpool to sign the player I've been asking them to sign since about, I said it earlier, since about 15 minutes after he debuted for Brighton for $8 million. And I was like, why didn't we sign that midfielder we need? And now we have, and it's just brilliant. So I wanted to start here. First off, did you get to watch the Community Shield on Sunday?
Did I have the chance to? Sure. Did I want to? And did I? No, I did not.
Perfect. So the reason is it's more about the extra time that was added on. So they basically played 113 and a half minutes total between the first and second half of football. It led to Pep whining about a bunch of stuff and people talking about it all over, but it looks like it's going to be an initiative and a directive. At the same time, last weekend, in the first full weekend of matches in the championship, the average extra time for the first half was 6.5 minutes per match. The average extra time at full time was closer to 8 minutes per match. If these trends continue, does that sway you in any way with how you plan and think about setting up your fantasy EPL side?
I don't think so, because especially who you're targeting, the guys you're targeting are the guys who are supposed to be starting, who are going to put in 70 to 90 minutes, regardless of how much extra time there is. And I think that when you target those guys, I don't think the extra 4 to 6 minutes in the first half will do much, because I think we'll still have the same sort of substitution patterns at the 55 to 60, 65 marks. So I think it's the most important thing to look out for in that respect would be the defenders to get the clean sheet points when they hit the 60. But I don't see a lot of managers subbing those guys out before the 60th minute mark, just because there's an extra 2 or 3 minutes of stoppage time in the first half.
Yeah, I have to actually disagree with you on some level. It doesn't change everything, but let me give you an example. I had Martinelli in my draft all along, right? Martinelli is always the first attacker taken off for Arsenal. Every single match. Saka is guaranteed 90 minutes. Odegaard played all but 35 minutes last season outside of one match he was injured. So to me, that $500,000, when you add in an extra 10 to 15 minutes of extra play, and statistically, the most goals are scored in the last 10 minutes of each match. Defensive breakdowns. It also changes the fact that now you're adding 8 to 10 minutes of dreaded clean sheet destroying moments. Like, I think this actually makes players like Salah, Saka, Bruno Fernandes, sorry. I think it makes them so much more valuable, actually, than it does a Jack Grealish, a Martinelli, even a Marcus Rashford, who averaged less than 80 minutes per match started last season. And I do believe that when you look at how you spend your money in fantasy, it is about projected volume. And that comes down to, goals per minute, output per minute. This is really how that's weighed. And I think this actually is going to play a role in reducing the number of defensive points, which I think feeds back into this year's model of 3-5-2. And I really do believe that there is something, if this is truly how they're going to manage this. And I think we talked about it last week, right? When we were talking about the strategy of building our teams. And I had mentioned that I'm really focusing on trying to create a side for basically the first 6 game weeks. Will I make some transfers? Yes. But if I have to rip the cord and hit my wild card in week 3 or 4, like I have in the past couple seasons, then I really strategically put this side together poorly. Because I feel like I've put together a team that is built to allow me to make 1-2 transfers here or there, maybe a double transfer after rolling one over for a little team construction, without taking hits and without setting myself off the pace, and also still being able to find some of those differentials out there. So we looked at this graphic last week. It's changed slightly since then, where it's really looking at, Chelsea, Everton, City, Arsenal, and United as having the best fixtures. This is looking at the first 8 game weeks. Have you looked at how you're altering your team? Are you, we're going to look at our reveals later. Are you double and triple capping, or doubling up, tripling on the top 6 teams in your big sides early? Or do you have kind of a diverse, spread apart side at this point? How much are the fixtures weighing into your decisions?
I've got pretty good diversity and I say this with the caveat of there's a good chance that half of my team is different by tomorrow. Because if you were part of the show last year, you knew that whatever I said on here was the absolute opposite of gospel, and I would just end up doing the opposite of what I said I was going to do. So right now, I would say there's good diversity because I think the best strategy in FPL is to have, like you're saying, have your plan, stick to your gut, and make the changes you were wanting to make, unless new information really changes the way you have to think about someone. So what I'm doing this year is I'm not doing that at all. I'm just going to go week by week, and I'm going to set myself up with guys that consistently I can have and not worry about. And then based on new information per week and what the fixtures will be like the following week, I will then go and make the necessary transfers there. So I don't think I'm necessarily playing this the best way, but I'm kind of bored of the way I've been playing it, and I wanted to spice things up. So I think this is how I'm going to go this year.
I can't lie. I agree with Trevor. I think you do have a fantastic background. I also think that if you go week to week every week, you might be the ultimate tinker.
Yes, absolutely.
And we also want to say hello from Joan Shaw. Welcome from Liverpool. And I don't know if that's you welcoming from Liverpool or you are in Liverpool. If you are in Liverpool, you have stayed up late, and we appreciate you tuning in. Let's take a look here. We're gonna go through some slides. We have asked for your comments, your questions. We've told you that you can send us your team reveals or rosters that you have, and we'll review them, critique them. I mean, honestly, it might just be the best way to listen to us and then do everything opposite and see if you outscore us. You probably will. But we had a few sent in this week. I'll apologize already. I noticed that some of the fonts and things are really, really small. So I don't even know, maybe even take us off the screen. Can kind of see this one, but it's a little tight here. This one was brought into us by the Eye Test FC team review. It's pretty well stated that you need an eye test to review this one. I don't know that we're going to actually be able to get this. We can see as Trent. Looks like it's Trent, Trippier, Henry, and Zinchenko. Which is an interesting, heavy amount of money invested on the defense. Darwin and Watkins. Can't really see who the bench is. I have to imagine this is a 100% non-playing bench with the prices on that screen. You agree, Matush?
Yeah, I agree. I think the big glaring thing that you have to reconsider, and I know it might not be the most fun to go with the grain all the time, but not having Haaland on your team is going to really hurt you, especially if you are someone who wants to stay competitive within the overall rankings of the game. Because of his ownership being at 80+%, if he has a really great game, you're fucked. I mean, and everyone's pretty much, most people are throwing their captain on Haaland. That's 20, 30 points potentially swing just right there right off the bat. And so while I don't hate the team overall, because I think there's some fun differentials in there, I think that not having Haaland will really hurt long term.
Yeah, and I just think there's so much money invested here. In that defense, that I think it really hurts. And I kind of wish I could see the defense, the subs, because kind of look at that and think there's a lot of money still left over there. Like, it's not like we have a bunch of fodder other than Jefferson Lerma being in the starting lineup, which is another one that kind of is a little bit of a head scratcher for me. So we'll move forward here. We have a double screen because these guys sent them in on their mobile devices. And we're looking here at Unnecessary Pet Drama, our very own Paul Bickler from the Monday Night Podcast, and Klopp and Schlober's team review.
Klopp and Slobbers, because I think it's like Cops and Robbers.
Oh, yeah, Cops and Slobbers. That's a good one. Cops and Robbers. That's a good one, actually. I like that. I always look for good names, and I always have terrible ones. But when you look at this side here, right, let's start with Bickler's side.
Yeah.
Semi-template, very light bench, right? Outside of Mbeumo, he might be the only player actually playing or starting, and he's even questionable and doubtful. But when you look at that starting 11 that Paul's putting out there, what are your overall thoughts regarding how he built the team? Do you have any specific areas you would see an area that he could improve and or share some critique with?
I think overall, I do really like the team. I like both teams, to be honest. And obviously, we're starting with Paul's. I do like the team a lot. I think having a United defender in there, if you're going to have one, having Luke Shaw in there is probably the best way to go. I know you're kind of sacrificing a little bit of maybe $500,000 too much in that, but if if he's able to provide what you expect him to provide in the first 4 or 5 weeks, I think that's great return. The one head scratcher I think you'd probably also agree is Declan Rice. I think for the price that he's at, and let me just double check here, he's 5.5 actually.
Okay.
5.5, which is the same price as Eze, right? So
no, Eze's 6.5.
Eze 6.5.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Everyone's gonna be watching this and going, no, these guys really don't know, or this, at least me, this man really doesn't know what he's talking about. Hold on. Let me do my trusty little look over here. Okay, for 5.5. Oh, I guess, I mean, you have the likes of Douglas Luiz and Jensen and Billing and Iwobi. I mean, okay, so I guess at the 5.5 marker, there isn't quite as much there to replace Rice with. So I think in that regard, might want to look at knocking down someone like Shaw to be able to go up to the 6 in the midfield. But I don't know if there's necessarily that much value in doing that. So I think, I don't know. What would you say for the Rice?
Yeah, I don't disagree. If I look at this side, the first thing I think is Rice overpriced, and or is Rice truly fit to be in this lineup, right? Now, if you tell me that for the majority, Rice is going to be your first substitute because Mbeumo will eventually be healthy and on penalties for a team where he is one of the lead strikers, maybe that actually kind of sways me to say, well, at least with Rice, you always have 90 minutes. You have clean sheet potential, and he's going to start almost every match. The one thing I will say, I genuinely want to see how Arsenal are going to set up. Because if Havertz is starting in the false 9 and you're playing Partey and Rice is picking up the positions that Granit Xhaka picked up last year, he's going to score goals from open play. And now you have a midfielder scoring goals at 5.5 million and creating assists. So on one hand, I kind of understand the Declan Rice thing, because if he is playing in a more advanced role and Odegaard is setting him up the way he would set up Xhaka on those late runs, and Martinelli cutting back in and things like that, I think there could be a little bit of a gem there, but I'd have to see it first. My bigger concerns would probably be like Lamptey. I think at this point, anyone holding on to Areola, not knowing if he's starting when there is Matt Turner for a 4 million starter, it just doesn't seem right to me, especially with Pickford. We'll get to that with my team. Pickford ultimately only has 3 matches that you don't want to have him in. I think it's match week 2, 5, and 9. And they're literally the 3 best matchups that Turner has in the entire first half of the season. So like he and Pickford are a really good rotation piece right now. So that'll be really interesting. Paul chimed in, honestly, doing it for those clean sheets. And I don't disagree with that. I think, like I said, I think getting those 3 points makes a lot of sense. And I also think he's the type of guy, even in a 0-0 draw, that could find himself in a bonus point scenario because of the completing passes and the tackles won. I still think eventually he finds his way to your bench when Mbeumo is healthy. But all in all, I really like the side. And I think there's a shot that Archer could end up actually contributing a little bit, especially with the injury that the backup striker there, the one that came from the Chicago Fire. Why can't I remember his name? Tell me, please, Mr. Chicago.
From what?
Where? The Aston Villa backup striker that came from
Turan.
Duran, right? He's
Duran,
injured right now. They're saying he's probably going to be out for the first 3 to 4 weeks.
Or Duran.
That probably puts Archer in the window to be a substitute and get an opportunity. And if Archer gets that opportunity and takes it, who knows? Maybe that ends up being a really good 4.5, bench enabler that ends up actually adding to the play. So when we look over at Cops and Slobbers, he has the goalkeeper tandem that I was talking about earlier. Nice rotation between Pickford and Turner. Built the team around Salah and Haaland. Obviously, heavy on the midfield, which I think we will see a lot in these previews. What are your thoughts overall here on this side?
I I can't fault much on that team besides having sort of a weaker bench. But if you're going to invest that much into your midfield, you'll find that you won't have too much money left over for the bench. So as long as you can get away with not worrying about substitutions and rotations, especially maybe in the beginning of the season, then I do really like the outlook of the team. I think João Pedro is a really good decision there at 5.5, especially with Brighton's fixtures. I think the only one that I might not necessarily love is Diaby, because you have the likes of Eze at 6.5. I think Eze as a talisman for Palace is a much better option than Diaby at Aston Villa. Only because Eze is also on penalties, right? He's on set pieces. So when you have those situations, you want to take advantage of them. And at 6.5 million, if you're picking between a guy who has a chance at a penalty every game versus a guy who doesn't, going with the guy who has a chance at a pen every game would be the way to go for me specifically.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I like Diaby from the standpoint of the differential, if that's why you're playing it. But again, I took it off the screen there for a moment, but I actually also feel that, like, though you are right about the bench, I think there's actually, like, between Taylor and Mubamba and Bollock and Turner, I mean, you basically have the cheapest possible bench you could put together. And if you have the cheapest possible bench you could put together, I'd like to believe that you'd have a little stronger defense than Estupiñán, Gabriel, and Shaw. And I personally, I'm going to be very honest, I didn't like Maddison as a fantasy asset when Harry Kane was at Tottenham. I surely don't like him setting up for Richarlison. And I understand he's on set plays and all this. They're going to leak goals. And honestly, unless they go out and spend all $100 million in the next 2.5 weeks, which as a Liverpool supporter, we can all raise the hand and tell you it is not the way to spend that kind of money, like on 8 players, right? They did it after Bale. It didn't work. We did it after Suarez. It didn't work. After Coutinho, we learned by 3 really good guys that change your whole entire club. I don't know that they can do that in 2.5 weeks. So, and I don't know if those players are available, and if they were, they'd probably be playing in Saudi Arabia. So, for me, I don't love the Maddison one. To your point, I think you could do something with Maddison and Diaby and actually get a lot better than what is here. But I actually like the look of this side in the way that it has both Mo and Holland and somewhat of a balanced attack. But I still feel, especially at the beginning of the year, that is a little light, right? So this team comes in from our contributor and friend, David Cosgrove, known on this podcast as Kazi. I love the idea that the name is Jota Get Through This Team Review, right? And Jota Get Through has Cody Gakpo and not Jota, which really is what made me laugh. It's not bad at all. Another one, rolling with Declan Rice, which I love. Him and Paul, they're in the same brain, right? Talk to me about this side a little bit, because this is a very, very interesting.
It's very interesting. A lot of faith in that Liverpool attack for the first few fixtures, and I get it. I think, if there's anything to be excited about for fantasy Liverpool-wise, it's definitely the attack. I think that's why we saw a lot of people bring Mo back on after leaving him out in their first couple drafts because of the price and because of just not really understanding how the team was going to go. But seeing preseason, if they're able to bang in 2 to 4 goals a game, Mo's going to be part of at least 1 or 2 of those every game. Whether it's a goal, whether it's an assist, you can expect some sort of return most weeks, which is sort of his MO, right? For the last, no pun intended, for the last 5 years. Like, he's been a fantastic fantasy asset. I like the idea of the Spurs defenders, but I think he's got the wrong ones. Mitrovic, I don't even know if his heart's in London at all. I don't even know if his head's in London. I don't
think he's going to play.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I think there's money that you could spend there. Gakpo, I originally had Gakpo in the first draft that we talked about. Just because I like the idea of the Liverpool attack, and I thought that Gakpo would be part of that. But I don't know if I necessarily love investing. If you're going to triple up with Liverpool, I don't think Salah, Sobo, and Gakpo is the way to go. But I do like that defensive line. I think it's solid. I mean, nothing too crazy. Having a City defender, Arsenal defender is just fine. If you're going to go with a Brentford defender, Ben Mee scored a lot of points last year. Honestly, for his price, he wasn't a bad pick. The other thing I would just look at is the keepers. You could do a little better with your keepers. But I think if you want to do something that's a little off template, that's a little different, it's a little fun, I like the direction this is headed. I think it just needs a little tweaking.
Yeah, I think you could take 4 or 5 of these players and tweak them to someone else. I mean, Walker might end up being at Bayern Munich by the time, we play next week. And I don't know that he's going to start. I would assume he would start against Burnley, but you never know with Pep, and that's a whole nother argument. I do agree with you on the 2 Tottenham defenders. Now, I don't love the Tottenham defenders, even though I love that they're going to go forward, and I think the manager is going to be attacking. They have been an absolute sieve. If we think our defense has been bad at Liverpool this preseason, they have been worse. And as of right now, Ben Davies is one of their starting center backs. And I understand, you expect Van de Ven eventually, but he's been there for 48 hours. And they just lost Harry Kane. And I'm sorry, we've talked about it before, like what the energy can be like when you sign a player like Moises Caicedo in the middle of the night and you don't know what happens. Like the guys at Liverpool wake up tomorrow feeling a hell of a lot better going into training for Chelsea than they did this morning, right? Whether he plays or not, it doesn't matter. It's the idea that he's here and the club is behind him. I think everyone at Tottenham knew and wanted Harry Kane to get his move. But I think when you wake up and you find out the best player that's played for your club in 50 years is leaving, and there's no guarantee who comes in behind him, and you have as much unrest as they have, I think it's going to make for a very, very interesting watch for how Tottenham starts. Because if Tottenham starts well, they may believe in it, buy some good players, and build on it, and challenge for a Europa League spot or a conference spot. If Tottenham starts this season poorly, Tottenham is going to be Chelsea and finish in the bottom half next year. And that's crazy to think they play in the most expensive stadium in the entire world, and they could literally be a bottom half of the Premier League table. And I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. So let's go to our next team, which is your team.
Misspelled my name.
Oh, listen, man. I did this really, really fast. And if I'm going to misspell anyone's name, it should probably be yours.
No, it's fine. I don't care.
It's E.
Yeah. Go ahead. Give me your thoughts.
All right. It's not that far off of my team, so banging on it will be a little tough. I do like Estupia. Obviously, I'll start with the ones I like, and then you'll know which ones are on my team. Estupiñán, Gabriel, Saka, Bruno Fernandes, Salah, João Pedro, and Holland. Turner. I think that's it. I don't believe I have Colwell on my side. I think this is a very well-balanced team. And what I really like about this is I like the differential option of Udogie. I think he has gone under the radar as one of the better signings. I don't think people realize how good he was. Was it Greece? They got him from Olympiacos, am I right?
Yeah.
How good he was as an attacking fullback in that league. I really like the Matt Turner. I do like Steele, but I will admit the Brighton double up hurts. I'm a little nervous about any double up defensively right now. And the Brighton double up means that you take out the option of having a Brighton asset to like if you wanted to, you couldn't plug and play Eze for Matoma. And anytime I have 3 guys on a team, I like to believe those 3 guys won't change. Now, you maybe set it and forget it with Steele, which I would totally respect. But they have a very good backup keeper. And I expect Brighton to take Europe very, very seriously. So I don't know which one gets the starts when that starts to happen. And I hate the idea of having to transfer out a goalie because I feel like that's a wasted transfer. It's not a hit, but it feels like a hit because I couldn't move out a player that could actually score some real points, or I could project to score more points. So maybe for me, I would think about a different $4.5 million option than Steele. I'm on Pickford. We'll look at that in a moment. I've already talked about why I like the rotation, but his ownership percentage is so high. The other thing there is I'm nervous about Newcastle as well. Like, I think they have a coming back to earth moment about to happen for them. And I wouldn't be shocked if it actually happens on the defensive end. Not that their results aren't as good or their points per match aren't as good, but I don't know that they can do what they did last year. I mean, They were the best defense in the Premier League through, I think, April, when City eventually did what City does, and that thing where they just don't lose for 30 straight matches and they win every single statistical anomaly by the end of the year. City's the only team that doesn't try to start fast to win a title. They just are like, we'll be slow and steady. We sit our guys. Like, I won't be shocked at all if they play like a random group of like randoms for here and there, and Ake starts 8 games in a row, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, now he hasn't played for 40 games. Like, it's what Pep does, and I think we talked about it at nauseum, but they played the least amount of players of anyone in the Premier League last year, which is crazy when you think that they're the deepest squad. The least amount of outfield players played for City last year. And they also had the least amount of matches and minutes lost to injury. Manager knows how to rotate. Something's right. And they, by the way, played 2 more matches than anyone in England.
Yeah.
It's really, really unbelievable. So any other questions you have or things you want critique or criticism on? Your midfield is outstanding. I think I've had all 5 of them at some point during this draft.
Yeah, I think going back to your Martinelli point, that's the only one that still isn't like 100% stuck there for tomorrow. There might be a little bit of a move just depending on how I feel. I think a nice thing about the first fixture tomorrow is that it is a City fixture. So getting the news of like the leaks of the starting lineup can be really huge to how you're shaping up for a couple positions going into the next couple weeks. Because I think if like Kyle Walker starts tomorrow, you'll see a lot of people jump on Kyle Walker and feel more comfortable about that for a few weeks.
Well, I got to tell you, I am working tomorrow and have like a crazy ass busy day, and I need to work my ass off so that I can get out early or sneak out early and go watch the match. So you better drop whatever Reddit or leak that you find in the Discord channel to share with me and the rest of the fantasy supporters who watch this show.
I got you.
Because we are all in this together. Because that is actually, in my opinion, like the beauty of this game is you can be in head-to-head leagues and those are fun. But the game is designed to compete against yourself and to compete against the game. So you can root for people to have good weeks. Like you can share a lineup. You can, because you may see that lineup and be like, oh, I'm going to down Martinelli and I'm going to go to Foden. And then I'm going to up, this guy and go to Stones, right? Because you can make that double move, right?
Yeah.
I am a little surprised you only have one City asset. If that was one thing I would bring up.
Yeah.
It was a little shocking to me that you only have one City asset. But as you see my team, you'll realize I don't have that much more faith in their attacking players from the rotation standpoint outside of Haaland.
It's exactly what you said earlier, though. Like they never start off hot. And defensively, there isn't anyone I would want on my team from the get-go for at least the first 8, 9, 10 weeks once they really start getting their groove. And then I could look into more about having a City defender because I agree that Newcastle's not going to be as strong defensively, but Botman being at 4.5.
Oh, it's 4.5.
There's no defender above 5 on this team. Gabriel and Stupinian are the only 2 at 5. The rest are at 4.5. So I think just that alone made me want to take the shot on that. And I think we'll see how the first couple weeks play out, and then I'll pivot from there.
Is McAtee at 4.5, or is he a 4 million defender?
He's a 4.5 forward.
Oh, he's a 4.5 forward. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had no clue who he was. Little surprised on that pick as well, but
just a little fodder there.
Yeah. So maybe I'll feed you a little fodder here. So The bench Cancelo's team reveal without Cancelo on the bench. Thank you very much.
Oh my.
What's that?
I think Gvardiol. I did not expect to see him, and Garnacho.
Yep. So
Whoa.
when you look at how much money I spent on this team and who I have here, I actually feel pretty good about it. I really am bullish on Chilwell at Chelsea. Statistically, he was the furthest player the entire preseason. People forget how good Mauricio Pochettino made fullbacks at Spurs, and actually like they became his wingers. So I think Ben Chilwell will almost play as an attacking left wing. At 5.5, I think he's better than Reece James if he's healthy, because he offers just as much on crosses. He took almost all of the left-footed corners. He's on set pieces at times. And I think that, like, if you put a ball on his left foot, he actually has a better chance to score a goal than any other fullback in the Premier League. And that includes Trent, to be honest. From open play, I think Ben Chilwell might be the best goal-scoring threat at the fullback position. So I really like him. And then when you couple that with Chelsea's fixtures, Baldock is, I'm just starting with my bench. Baldock is a $4 million locked in starting defender. So that enables me to make different moves. From everywhere that I see in the last preseason matches, that is the only $4.5 million starting forward in the game from Sheffield United in Osla or whatever the name is. So he's not there to score points. He's not there to play a lot, but he is there because I saw 3 different people that I really respect put him in the expected first 11 for that team. And if there's a $4.5 million striker that might play more than 10 minutes a game, makes total sense to have him in my side. Haaland and João Pedro, I think, speak for themselves. You have them as well. I think João Pedro is ultimately why Brighton was so comfortable to make the moves that they did. I think he's going to be an absolute star, and I think it'll be 2-3 seasons and he'll be playing at a top club. Estupiñán, Gabriel, Gvardiol. Gvardiol was a concession. For me to get Salah in this team, I had to decrease from John Stones. I had Ake at one point, but it doesn't look like he's going to play much. I'm worried about Akanji. And I genuinely don't know that you spend 90 million on a player and don't play him. And I think he makes them better. I think he's still a goal-scoring threat, and he can play on the right or at center back. So I really like that. I've already expounded on the Pickford Turner items. And then my midfield, Garnacho was the enabler to allow me to not have to go down to the Eze's, Matomas. It allowed me to stay with Bruno Fernandes, Saka, and Odegaard. In that, I genuinely believe that I have 4 of the top 7 midfielders in the entire game. I think I have the best striker and 2 or 3 of the best defenders and a cheap goaltending. And I have 3 people. I also feel like I have 15 starters, which I think puts me in a good position if my goal is really to run this season with limited transfers and like playing the long game. Yeah. So I won't lie. Taking a flyer on one of the most like vile and disgusting Premier Leaguers that plays for Manchester United is tough.
But he's 5 million.
But he's 5 million.
And he could play a lot.
And over the second half of the season, he was United's second best attacker outside of Rashford. And to be honest, Højlund is already hurt, which means Rashford's probably going to have to play through the middle. And Jadon Sancho looks like he ate Casemiro. So, I mean, he doesn't even look like a shell of the player. And I think Ten Hag is almost done with him. I think Pellistri has a better opportunity of getting minutes in big spots than Jadon Sancho does. And I think if you're Manchester United and you're honest with yourself, Garnacho offers you more than Sancho, Anthony, and even Højlund to start the season. So for me, I like the idea of it. And we talked about it earlier. I'm pretty bullish on Bruno Fernandes this year. I just think that it's a big year for him. I think having Casemiro and Mount behind him is just going to make him so much stronger. He's going to get to push forward. We already know he plays 90 minutes every match. He is on penalties. He is on set pieces. So I believe it or not, it took a long time and about 20 different, bookmark drafts to get to this point. And tomorrow I will probably make 5 moves, and this team will probably outscore that team by 45 points.
Hey, as long as your midfield is still all red, I think that's funny. I think that's great.
That is funny, especially for the colorblind guy who can barely see it. But it is funny that they are all red. And I will say, like, there'd be some blue in there. I had Foden in there for a ton of time, but I can't get myself wrapped around Pep not just screwing me over in that midfield. The one area I'm a little, I don't want to say nervous about is, let's say João Pedro doesn't start, gets that late, or second half substitution. I do believe he will start, but there's a little bit of trepidation that I have. Like, if I was willing, I should tell this up front. I plan to roll my transfer. I am not using a transfer in week 2. This team will roll out in week 1 and week 2. So I have 2 free transfers in week 3 for a little squad reconstruction. If I were planning or making a move differently, I might consider not starting with Chilwell, and using some of that money to maybe invest in like an improved player over Garnacho and then making the move. But anytime I do that with no money in the bank, some guy goes up 0.1 5 minutes before I make the transfer, and my waiting 2 weeks to bring in Garnacho and Chilwell for Bayer and Eze blows up in my face, and I can't make the move. And I do feel, to your point, where you're like, I'm just going to play week to week. I also am like, if I'm going to play something like trying to map out transfers and work out 4 or 5 weeks, I genuinely don't want to put myself in positions that I've put myself in before, where I have plans, but I bank on nothing changing between now and then. I wanted to have 0.5 in the bank to start the season. Unfortunately, with putting this squad together, I couldn't do that unless I go Odegaard to Martinelli. But that really kind of speaks against everything I talked about earlier in the pod of why the Martinellis and Trossards are making me a little nervous. It's the same reason why Nketiah is not there. $5.5 million striker who might play 3 weeks in a row for Arsenal, even as a sub. Yeah. He's a good pickup. But now I got to transfer him out because he's not going to start once Gabriel is healthy. I don't believe there's a player on this screen outside of maybe the guy whose name I don't know and or how to, like, that dude could walk in here right now, right, and kick the door in, and I wouldn't know who the hell he was. I just know that I read a bunch of people I know say, it looks like he's going to start. And it'll be interesting to see if he does. But for $4.5 million, he can sit on my bench, and if he doesn't start, he won't play. And then Chilwell will be the sub. But the only one in here I'm really nervous about is Gvardiol. So if you see that he's not playing, please let me know.
No, yeah, I will. I think, and I love the Chilwell pick. If I had room for him in my setup, that he was one of the first that I was looking at and thinking about putting in. Like you said, I think he is a better Reece James as far as FPL goes right now. And I think overall it's going to be a really good pickup over the next few weeks. So I might still try and fit Chilwell into my team somehow. It would require me to get off of most likely Estupinian or Colwill and coming down from Eze or Salah. But we'll see. So yeah, I think overall I like the look of your team, to be honest. I like that.
Thanks,
a lot.
Man. I tweaked it this afternoon because I knew I had to have something for a screenshot for tonight, and the way it looked this morning was just god awful. Though I still think there's some tweaks here. Another one that I really like, and I think that if you're looking for a differential in the midfield and you do decide that you want to come down off an Eze, I think there is a really, really good chance that Lewis Potter will be a starter for Brentford. And I think he's at 4.5. And I think he led them in goals and assists in the preseason. So if he is playing and he's 4.5, 5 million, you're saving money. I went with Garnacho because I watched the kid last year, like with my own eyes, be a match winner. And then I watched him on the U.S. tour on, because they were the only football matches played at regular time at night that Lionel Messi wasn't playing and winning here in the United States. I watched those matches and he genuinely looked every bit as up for it as a Rashford he looks like a kid who is on the cusp of becoming, I don't want to say a star. He looks like he's on the cusp of becoming an everyday professional at this level. And, until United does the unthinkable and brings Greenwood back, they need goals. And I think paying $80 million for a kid who has less than 30 professional starts is a big, big gamble. And I think they're going to do a lot of Marcus Rashford through the middle, in my opinion, with Anthony on the right and Garnacho on the left. And I think if Garnacho is playing on the left, coming inside, and Luke Shaw is going outside of him, I think there are real opportunities for him to score. And at 5 million, I just saw it was basically Garnacho and Mo, or another $8.5 million player and a 6.5. And I thought to myself, I honestly, as soon as Kane left the game, I honestly didn't feel there was a world that Mo couldn't be in my team. All year, every pre-thing we did, every chat we had, I told you I couldn't have a $12.5 million midfielder that wouldn't be my captain. And then I put my team together and I started looking at him and I'm like, the only reason to not have Mo is to have Trent. So let's spend a minute there. Let's talk about, we got a few minutes left here, maybe 5-10 more minutes left as we wrap this up. Let's talk about what's changed for us this summer and why, right? I'll be honest, Trent went into my team the moment I opened the game, playing in the inverted right wing position. His attacking returns down the end of last year. He was still the third or fourth highest rated or defensive player points wise, and he had a terrible season and we couldn't keep a clean sheet. Was it Liverpool's defense in the preseason that has made you question his value at that price? Or is it the additions that they've made that could reduce in some of his fantasy appeal from corners, set pieces, and bar I say it, even free kicks within distance?
I think it's definitely more of the latter, because even with how the season ended last year, we knew there were going to be defensive troubles, but we were still in on Trent because of, like you said, the offensive returns. Given the fact that Szoboszlai is as great as he is at corner kicks, given the fact that he is as talented as he is on free kicks, having those two things taken away from Trent's foot from a game-to-game basis really changes the way you look at a defender that costs that much money. If you still had the situation where, I think if the team rolled out without Szoboszlai, there was no Szoboszlai in the picture, you still had, let's say, McAllister Jones. Let's throw Caicedo in there because why not? I think having Trent would have still made sense, because I think that the defense gets a little better with Caicedo in front of him, and then he's not taking off his duties by Sobo as much. So that would make sense. But to your point, with the transfers coming in, it's hard to really look at a guy that costs that much, who won't be giving you clean sheet returns, and who is really limited now moving forward as far as where he's delivering the ball from.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of it. It's why he came out on my side. I think Kelly's, my wife, still has him in her side, which probably means he'll do outstanding and
which is fine. Whatever. If he does, he does. Yeah.
And he can, and I want that, but it'll just mean that he'll do outstanding and outscore me, because that's what she likes to do. But I think there were a few of those things, right? Like we saw that one. That was just glaring to me. And we watch a lot of their preseason matches, and we'll remind listeners in case they're just tuning in that the guy over the top left-hand shoulder of that good-looking man with his green screen right there, that's Liverpool's supposed newest signing, hopefully to be announced as early as tomorrow, Moises Caicedo. And I do wonder if it doesn't alter things, because I think part of Trent tucking in and doing the inverted role was based on the tactics and why we were doing it. And I don't know that helps if Szoboszlai or McAllister is in front of him. And I don't know you need to do it if a healthy Moises Caicedo is sitting at the base in front of your defense.
Right.
And I know that's going to upset people because they were all excited about Trent, the midfielder, but he's still Trent, the right back. And right backs get a lot of points for clean sheets or assists. And a lot of those assists do come from corners and set pieces. And if he's not on them, I question whether or not his expected goal involvement will be as high as it was in years past. So there's one. The other one I'd like to talk to you about is barring today's huge news, right? So let's be honest. Caicedo is big news. It's not even a blip on the spectrum of like world football news when you talk about Harry Kane leaving his boyhood club.
Yeah.
Arguably the second best, maybe first or second best Premier League player of the last decade. In my opinion, he's the best striker to play in the Premier League in 15, 20 years, in my opinion. I know how good Kun Aguero was. I know what people will tell me about all these guys at their heights, and, everybody forgets how good Van Persie was. And I agree. And I think they've been great goal scorers. But I think what separated Harry Kane is that any impasse, Harry Kane has proven, like we used to always joke about Bobby and talk about how like nobody can drop deep like Bobby and bring players in. Nobody passes. And Harry Kane doesn't have some of Bobby's flicks and tricks by any means, right? But he created just as many goals for others, while scoring 30 a year for himself. And he never skirt-tailed trying to press, working hard, coming back, like putting in a tackle. He's actually exceptionally good on defensive set pieces, as like heading the ball out. One year he led the Premier League in headed clearances inside his own penalty area. He's a striker. Like, there are things that great players do, right? Harry Kane does that. He deserved this move, in my opinion. That said, what does this do to Tottenham Hotspur from a fantasy Premier League perspective in your mind?
It's tough because I think it decreases the value of all those guys who are around him.
Everyone.
You could argue that Son wouldn't have had the seasons he had if Kane. I mean, you can't argue that. It's a fact that Son wouldn't have had the seasons he had if it wasn't for Kane. And as great as Son is, and I think, at one point I would have loved to have him on the left side at Liverpool, because I think he would have been perfect for the system. He was made that much better because him and Harry Kane had such a fantastic partnership. And I was really excited to see what Maddison could do and what Kane could do together. I think that would have been a really fun partnership as well. And I just don't get as excited about Maddison playing a through ball to Richarlison. Like it when I say those words out loud, it scares me. It's not fun.
Well, everything about Richarlison should scare people, because when he gets angry, people can die. That's the way I look at things. Like, I look at the dude, like I see Mean Mug. I've said this before. There will be a documentary someday where they find bodies in Brazil attributed. It might not be him, but it will be his people. It will be his doing, or it will be one of his bad tattoos that led someone to be like, I should probably off this guy. I'm serious when I say this. The guy scares me. There's something crazy about them eyes. Do you know that his ownership has already risen 30% today?
That's crazy.
To me, it's nuts. I know a good friend of mine has got him in his side. Felt like he was Kane was always going to leave. Don't know that I would be looking to do that if I were them, right?
Yeah.
I think they're going to make the move. I think they're going to be the ones to sign. I don't even know how the hell you pronounce it. The big Juventus striker that kind of flubbed up, and they need the money and came from Fiorentina. I think Vlahovic, right? I think it makes a lot of sense, right? They have time to get him in. He's a big body. And who knows, maybe he turns out to be a stud. I think they also have to sign a young one. You know, if this happened earlier, I think they would have put all their money into Ollie Watkins, and I think they would have really made a strong move for Watkins. I don't think there's any way Villa sells Watkins now, especially with Europe on the horizon.
Evan Ferguson could have been a good target for them, I think, if this was earlier too.
That's another one. You know who I do think might still be a target? And it would be really, really sad. And he's not an out-and-out striker, but if you played the right system, I think Brennan Johnson would look perfect in a Spurs setup. And I think he has the skill sets to play off of if you were to go out. Like, if I were them, I'd be looking at buying Vlahovic and maybe trying to get a Brennan Johnson out of Forest. You know, there isn't a lot of young striker talent out there right now. And I think to let a guy like Harry Kane go without knowing where you're going to go, I mean, maybe they're the ones who go into Leverkusen and just blow him away for Muani, but he's getting offers at, you know, PSG and Champions League clubs. Is he going to go to Tottenham? And
I mean,
like,
I think ultimately, from a Spurs perspective, and I'll just try and make this quick, like, when's the next time you're going to get that kind of offer for Harry Kane? You
had to take it.
You most likely won't. So I think they could take this year as, hey, we have all this money that we can invest into different places. Let's not flub it like we did with the Bale money, and let's kind of take our time and hit the positions and hit the players that we want more than just getting a bunch of guys in just for the sake of getting them in because we have the money. So I think from that point of view, it made sense because they're not going to get that kind of offer again.
I saw one rumor today that was great, and it would never happen, but it would be awesome. Is basically they contacted Inter Milan and basically offered them 20 million more than what they're going to buy Flo Balogun for, just to purely fucking start him against Arsenal in the first North London derby. That right there would make me actually root for Spurs all year long, because that would be some outstanding shit. The truth is, he's not going to go to either, because unfortunately for West Ham, and I feel bad for them, they are going to lose Lucas Paqueta, and he is going to go to Manchester City. But they're going to get 80, 90 million for him, and they're going to be the ones. I think it's going to be 90 to 100. I don't think West Ham likes to ask, but I don't know that West Ham is getting 100 million for a guy they paid 50 for last year, but we'll see. I could see West Ham really spending heavy for Balogun and making him the center forward that they build the side around. Because let's be honest, it's basically Bowen and a little more Bowen. I mean, Antonio looks like a washed up case. The rest of the players on that front three, you know, I think they're nice players, but really, is there anything in that West Ham side from an attacking standpoint anymore that you like? Cornet was not a success. Benrahma, hit or miss. Downs, up and down, literally.
Scamacca was.
I mean, Scamacca, and somehow they got 30 million.
I don't know how.
From Atalanta for him, and Roma was like pissed, breaking stuff because they thought they were getting him.
It's the Italian tax.
But they just they wanted those Italian neck tattoos. Everybody needs an Italian neck tattoo. And with that, we'll just remind everyone that it looks like Liverpool signed Moises Caicedo tonight.
This guy.
That guy. And I got to be honest.
I'm probably jinxing it.
The league might be in trouble. I will blame you if it doesn't happen, because you were the one who dropped the fake tweet earlier while I was eating and made me think they got him, and then literally dropped a comment in here.
I knew all
and
along.
You know, I didn't even bring it up on screen because I thought it was a joke about asking for comments until I saw the red like actual, like, here we go emblem, like the sirens.
Yeah.
And that's when I had to just interrupt, like literally just stop Trevor and be like, just stop talking. Please stop talking. We need to go in here. It was great. And oh man, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for folks. So as a reminder, tomorrow's deadline is 1:30 p.m. Get your team's rosters in by 1:15, people. Don't whine about the servers going down. Don't whine about late changes. Like, if the servers go down, you can be mad. They shouldn't go down. But you've played this game before, and they've gone down with 5 minutes to go when everyone's trying to get their team in. So get your transfers done with 15 minutes or so to go. Be ready, and then don't go back and look at the website until about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, because it's going to take that long to update. It pisses everyone off on the first game of the year every year because the game takes forever to update.
Honestly, don't look at it. Don't look at it until Monday, because whatever happens. You can't change anything.
Truth is, you can't change anything, and all you will do is bitch about why you can't change anything. Maybe I'm talking to my two guys that hang out with me on Monday nights. Maybe I'm just talking to people out there that like to bitch. But either way, for myself and Matus from Chicago, the Polish Prince, we appreciate you watching. We appreciate you listening. We really appreciate all the people who sent in their teams. We would really love to get more questions thrown out throughout the program in the chat, and maybe we'll put a segment each week to answer those questions. If you think of them midweek and you want to send them, go to our YouTube page. You can find us at American Scouser. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You'll get all kinds of great content, including the Premier League show, the Monday night podcast, the Thursday night podcast. We have Redditorials coming out, little quick hits on sporting news. And then, of course, you have the morning coffee show, 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with Tamuchin and friends, as I like to say. So for myself and Matoush, thank you very much. Hope all your transfers worked. You had enough time to put them in. Don't overthink it, people. And honestly, just have some fun. The game is supposed to be there to add to the enjoyment of watching the best sport in the world.
It's back, baby.
Don't let it be the thing that makes you actually irritated, because I've been there, and the game is not worth that much unless someone's paying you for it. So if one of you would like to support and or sponsor this broadcast and start paying us, we can then start getting angry and care more. All right, everyone. Have a great week. We'll be back next Thursday, 9 o'clock Eastern, talk about how we did. More importantly, talk about where our teams are going to go next. Thanks. Have a great week.